it's hard to change your mind on stuff that you've been told that's true. I mean, I believe for the longest time the Federal Reserve is privately owned. I believe that for like 5 years.
That was one other thing I wanted to mention. I remember, and I was looking for it today, but I couldn't find where I remember the day, and I remember talking about it, but I can't remember in what format I talked about it. That the bankruptcy of the United States, right? That all these gurus talk about.
Yeah.
Bullshit. Because last show he said, the one thing they might have got right was the bankruptcy. No, actually, I remember wanting to verify that too, because everything was turning out to be a lie.
Yeah.
And I verified that
It's
the
a
United
lie.
States. Who the hell does the United States declare bankruptcy to? It is the bank,
Right.
first of all.
So they can't
right?
go bankrupt. Yeah.
Right.
They might go insolvent.
They can not pay their bills.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. And that's happened quite a few. Default is not bankruptcy.
That's so
true.
There
has never been a bankruptcy. Now, there's been one mention of bankruptcy, and that was a colloquialism that was used by the congressman that went to the senator that went to jail. Can't remember his name. I think it was Chicago. But he said, "We're here today managing the largest bankruptcy ever." Da, da, da. But it was when he said bankruptcy, he didn't actually mean, bankrupt is a term that really refers to the personality or the irresponsibility of the person that is bankrupt, not necessarily that the action of bankruptcy. You can be morally bankrupt, is what I'm saying. So,
Right.
which is a lot of what we're dealing with. So, but I just wanted to make that clear that is another mythology. There is no bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Not even states can declare bankruptcy. That's part of the bankruptcy code of the United States. So it just doesn't work that way. The bankruptcies for corporations of a different sort. That would be, like I said, who would you be appealing to, right? These are the logical kind of things you have to think about. There's no one to declare bankruptcy to. Now, you can get into debt, like so many countries do, to the World Bank and everything, but you're still, they're not bankrupt. They're just unable to pay debts. And so they they loan money or they borrow money and they give things like water rights away and are screwed for the rest of their, they pretty much have destroyed their people by doing so. I got to plug in here. Give me 1 second.
All right. But yeah, that was another thing, I believe that too for a long time. The U.S. went bankrupt 3 times. But yeah, I mean, there's a difference between insolvency and bankruptcy. So
well, I mean, insolvency. I mean, that's like, well, the thing is, when you can print money arbitrarily, how do you possibly go bankrupt?
Yeah,
they can declare everything. All debts can be declared nullified tomorrow if they wanted to.
Right, and like you said, they are the banks. So how do you?
Well, I showed in my documentaries, I showed they have enough money to pay off all their debts. They just put it into investments.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is just one big fat lie. And I fell for the lie too early on in the game.
Yeah.
So I don't blame people again for believing these things. They kind of sound reasonable until you look. But we don't look. I got to tell you, man, for me, I'm almost embarrassed to say that I was a part of the truth movement. I mean, at this point, what it's produced is so far worse than anything the mainstream could have produced. I hate to say that, but geez, what the hell, people?
It's a worse indoctrination, I would say. It's and I first heard about the bankruptcies watching a John Birch Society documentary about it. And so I didn't realize at the time that they were CIA.
It's parrots, and the parrots repeat each other. They don't actually do the research themselves. Yeah. I can't tell you how many documentaries have the same thing. There's quotes about the Federal Reserve that are known to be false, and they
Right.
use them anyway. And I don't know if they know this or what. I mean, it's just, I'll tell you what changed for me. I think I'm glad that I started the way I started, because the first thing I really looked into, thanks to Walter Burian, were the freaking audits of government, the comprehensive annual financial reports. Man, once you look at the audit, there's no more guesswork. Like, it's all there. Anything you want to know
Right.
about the Fed, look at the CAFR. They have to print it, because guess what? They're not private.
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
independent, not private. So
Yeah.
all government corporations, and that's everything, have to have a CAFR. So you want to know anything, just go to the audit. They call it the audit. So I don't know. I I really I almost it almost makes me want to go and discover, is it a big disinformation op that I was a part of unwittingly?
Mhm.
Is it just pure ignorance? Is it a combination? Is it Who's behind this? Because it seems to me, like you've said, it's been going on for a long time, and we're just the latest parrots to come in, parrot the same thing, but suddenly
Yeah.
realize, hey, something's wrong here.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. People just misled and the perpetuators of the deception. Um, so yeah, let's get into that. So now we're talking about the secret trusts that are out there. So there's a lot of people that message me or on a call, they ask me about accessing their all caps name trust. And so there's this thing being pushed out there where the idea is when you're born and given a birth certificate, the government creates a trust for you. And so you as a baby are turned into a surety bond worth millions of dollars, and the bond is traded on the stock market. And your all caps name is all caps because it's a corporation and trust. And so when one becomes aware of the trust doing certain procedures that people sell info on, we can access the trust money. And, some say that's worth millions of dollars. And so this trust is often referred to as the Cestui Que Vie Trust, also called the straw man trust. And I'm sure there's other names that I'm missing, but
Treasury Direct is what they actually use. And
yeah,
again, the Fed is very clear on their on their website, because so many people inquire with the Fed or leave some nasty comment that the Fed has to create a FAQ, which is a question and answering questions. And it's like, look, we only deal with banks. We don't have anything for you. Go
right.
away.
Yeah. Yeah. They only deal with banks, not individuals. And that's really clear cut if you look into it. And so often accessing the supposed trust, this process is called the redemption process. And so I see common patterns of these self-proclaimed experts on how redeeming trusts work. And so the first thing I'll see is they claim the United States is the custodian of the person's estate. The second thing I see is the Cestui Que Vie Trust started in 1666 and presumes that everyone is dead or lost at sea or abandoned their estate. And of course, this is assuming British venue and jurisdiction.
Right. That would be something in England
Yeah,
or
and we'll get into that later. The third thing I see is, well, you're entitled to the interest of the estate from the United States. That's what these self-proclaimed experts say. The fourth thing I see, they purport that the country went bankrupt in 1933, and then we're all collateral because they got rid of the gold, supposedly, and we're all collateral. And so, number five, there is no money, and your signature is used as credit for the debt. And then the sixth
so.
thing, I'll go ahead.
Well, just on that, we can end that right now, because I have a quote somewhere in my blog and elsewhere,
Yeah,
right from Congress. I think it was Patman, that says the dollar will be worth 100 cents on the dollar because it is backed by all property in the United States. Not
right.
you, That means your house, your car, all the things that you've registered that are considered, what's the term they use? That's you're putting it into essentially this sort of trust, if you will, but the dollar is actually backed by the good faith and yeah. Well, that means that all your property is what is backing the United States dollar. And so,
Yeah.
no, you are not. And the other aspect of this, to answer most of these questions, the birth certificate is an application that creates an artificial person, okay, a status in society, the lowest possible status, the same one given to the emancipated slaves, okay? Slavery became nationalized. So that was left open to us. We were all tricked worldwide into putting ourselves, but you got to understand that the person, the status, it would be like me saying I am the character in that video game, right? It'd be like because that character has to go through hell to finish the game, I deserve some kind of monetary reward. No, that's not the way it works. You are not the person. The person is not you. It's like a car. You either use the car or you don't, right? Or you use the trust. Either or, you act in private or you act in public. If you act in public, you need some vessel, and that's why we have you create this LLC. So you're using the person. The person is not redeemable. It's not even yours to redeem. It
Right.
is part of the game. You use it to play the game. It is like a Monopoly character. It belongs to the game. There's no, there's one redeemer. And I know people don't like to hear, but who's the redeemer? Think real hard here. There's one redeemer. It's
Yeah.
actually one of the 50 names given to Christ.
It's Yahweh.
Christ
Yeah.
the Redeemer. What
Yeah.
does that mean? It means the law of nature, the law of God is your redemption. Follow the law, that is the personification, that is Christ. Follow Christ's example. That is your redemption. That means you're not going to be looking for monetary rewards. You're looking for spiritual rewards. Money's not spiritual. You don't look for artificial things to fulfill a spiritual need or a spiritual desire. You're not going to get redemption from artificial things. So stop, please.
Yeah. And that's assuming this thing is even real, right? Which will prove that it's not. The whole secret trust and the
No, no.
UCC and all the redemption strategies. And then the sixth thing I see that these supposed experts say is because there's no money, because we went bankrupt in 1933, that in turn means that the American people whom are the creditors, not the debtors, as the banks and utility companies would like everyone to believe. That's what they all say. I've been told that many, many times. The seventh thing I see as a common pattern is they tell you to post a schedule of fees for this trust, and this determines allowance of trust money to be self-curated. So now, with all this said, it actually astounds me how little these gurus care to know about trust law and estate planning and how it actually works. This is not how trusts work in the first place. The whole point of using a trust is to avoid having an estate. The whole point of having a trust is not to go to probate court. You only go to probate court if you have an estate. And so they have everything backwards when it comes to the trust mechanics. And the whole point of having a trust is also to be private. When you do all this kind of woo-woo nonsense, you're putting yourself in the public. And so for you to access a private trust, that's not even possible. So, okay. And then another thing is, like I said earlier, they'll tell you, and we've heard this from many gurus throughout the decades, that you're traded on the stock market. Well, guys, I trade the stock market quite a bit, and anyone can look this up. There's only around 5,000 stocks in the entire US stock market. How could there be 300 million people being traded on there? It doesn't add up. And so this is a public exchange system. So all the companies, they got to comply with financial transparency to the market and the indexes, the investors, and SEC. So for the public to see every financial and fiscal detail, they had to be real companies making real earnings and distributing real shares to the public. And so it would make more sense for the Patriot myth to be described in private equity rather than public equity, but I digress. So now another thing is, these gurus, they'll tell you to do all sorts of different types of fraud. And so this is going to involve forging endorsement on treasury checks or bonds or securities. If you look in Title Code 18, so Section 510, that's a crime to forge these types of financial instruments. And then another crime is the wire fraud. You look in Title Code 18, subsection 1343, that's a 30-year sentence and $1 million fine. The third crime is the securities fraud, and this is USC 18, subsection 1348. That's a 25-year sentence, $1 million fine.
But this is only if you don't do it exactly like they tell you, right?
Oh, yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah,
if you do it exactly in their wording, then everything will be okay, and none of that applies.
Their way is special.
If you mess up, it's your fault. It's your fault if you mess up.
Right. Yeah, and we've seen, I'll be showing you guys cases where people have tried this thing and they end up getting put away. And so it's always the same strategy, just repeated over and over. Sometimes they, put in a little caveat to make theirs a little different, but at the end of the day, they have you do the same stuff. And so this is bond fraud as well. This is mail fraud. That's USC 18, subsection 1341. Again, that's a 30-year sentence, $1 million fine. And bank fraud, USC 18, subsection 1344. That's a 30-year sentence, and again, $1 million fine. And so now, a lot of times, these same people that subscribe to this will say that a bill is a statement or something like that. I can't remember the exact verbiage. But guys, realize a bill is a liability. You signed and agreed to the contract as the responsible party in the underwriting. And so a lot of times you give your SSN, especially with your contracting with the power company, right? And so your all caps name doesn't mean it's a corporation or a trust. A trust name has to have trust at the end of the name to be cognizable as a trust of conveyance. All caps names comes from Roman civil law. It's how it's been done for a long time. It's a styles technique. The narrative is a corp is an old patriot myth going back decades ago, and it really became rampant in the 90s, where we had major CIA infiltration in the truth movement.
Well, you also, it's part of the style manual.
Yes.
So to be clear, it's another form of uniformity so that there's no confusion among things. But you're also talking about, well, I tell you what, I put it in my I put it in my video because one of the patriot mythologies is the difference between the US and the USA and and it turns out those are also just styles. The reason that there's actually a US and a USA is only because the US system of styles for naming countries, and they have an office for this. I showed in my video, my Red Pill video. The office actually has a different set of, like, again, one uses US, one uses USA, and therefore it appears that there are two different entities, but in fact all it is a different naming convention from the international body and the United States. And there's an office that specifically handles naming, and it's called naming something, I can't remember, but I put it in the video because it's just another one of those things that, no, it's not true. All it is a way of defining or uniformly, expressing something, and it has to do with different laws and different, essentially it's just another way of conf- of confusing people. Basically, you go back to the original Constitution, the old Constitution, the new Constitution. There's no such thing as the old or the new. I understand there's a lot of stuff out there that makes it seem that way because that's how they draw you in. They want you to think, and my message to you is, hey, it's time to go forward, not backward. We don't want to go back to the way it was. We go back to the way it was.
Yeah.
Well, then, well, welcome back slavery. Welcome back all the bad things, the disease, and all the right. Let's go forward. Let's leave this completely degraded system, corrupt system, a system that cannot help but go corrupt, and get ourselves out of it, because there's nothing to go back to. There is no good times. This whole system is based on the feudal system. There's
Mm-hmm.
no time that you can go back where you're in a position for the first time in history, really, that you have this so-called freedom, which again is a franchise, to
Right.
actually do something, but that's on par with the nobles, the feudal lords and things, right? There's the first time in history that, I'm starting to realize that we're allowing them to use all these tools, and we're not doing it ourselves. It's
Yeah.
open to us as well. Like I said, this is the only way, in my opinion, that we can actually fight the evil, is to start utilizing these things that they've been using against us, that they use to protect their criminal activity. Well, we need to use it to protect our God-given rights.
Yeah. And that's why I try to demonstrate for people all the time, because a lot of people will say, well, so and so or such court doesn't have jurisdiction over me because it's a corporation and I have rights in the Constitution, blah, blah, blah. And look, we had rights before the Constitution was there. The Constitution doesn't give you the rights, it only describes it.
Well, it's also very important. In fact, it's the first thing that someone actually made a bumper sticker, because I made a blog, and it says, "I am not the people, and neither are you. I am
Yeah,
not. We are not
right,
the people. Persons, first of all, are not people,
right,
right? People is plural. Persons is plural. There's no mixing the real and the artificial. The people are the states, represented by the senators, the congressmen, right? So there is no people. Like, when you think of people, you think individual people as one body politic, but it's the body politic, the corporation, if you will, of those people, the full body that we call a state, that is the people. We, the states, in order to form a more perfect union. Well, do you know what perfect actually means?
what's that?
What do you do when you perfect something?
No, it's
That's
complete,
a
right?
financial. You're actually, what that means is, we're bringing the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. That means they're bringing it into the international body. That's what that means. We're perfecting our debts. We're perfecting our credit. That's what the word perfect means. Oh, well, it's so romantic. They just wanted to make a more perfect union. No, that's a legal term. It has nothing to do with, like, spiritual or whatever perfection. No, it
Right.
actually is a term of the legalese that means put it into the international body. Remember, they're creating a nation state, just like they did around the world to take over all countries.
Yeah.
So, look, the other aspect that I think is really important, and I've done a lot of, my whole first season of my show was geared a lot on this, which is that, look, you essentially live, because one of the questions I get a lot is, well, okay, well, the Libra Code says that we can, the conquering government, as prisoners of war, we are under these uh, this code of how to treat internal prisoners of war, right? How do you treat your own people? Well, the conquering government will keep the same government going. So it appears that you're in the same, that you won the war, and yet it also says, but it can change that government and that law at any time. So at any time, things can change, right? So I want you to understand we live in a lawless society. We can say, oh, it's Constitution and all these, their Constitution is pretty much, it's suspended. And I just want to
Wow.
read a few quotes so that we understand. Okay, this was a congressional document, and these are congressional quotes, right? In 1933, right? This is when everybody says we went bankrupt.
Right.
Congress, this is what Congress voluntarily made this law, which gave the office of the president, the executive, from that point forward, basically dictatorial powers. Gave him the power to create what you might call a suspension of law, but in that, law. The Act of March 9th, 1933, Title I, Section 1, Congress. The action is, I want you to really listen to what this says. The actions, regulations, rules, licenses, orders, and proclamations, right? That's presidential orders, presidential proclamations, heretofore and hereafter taken, promulgated, made, or issued by the President of the United States or the Secretary of Treasury since March the 4th, 1933, pursuant to the authority conferred as of 1917, are amended, are hereby approved and confirmed. Now, what does that say? It says all orders, like executive orders, presidential proclamations and directives, regulations, rules, licenses, the actions of, right, heretofore or hereafter, that's before and after, promulgated, made, or issued by the President of the United States, the executive of the corporation, right, or the Secretary of Treasury under the President, since 1933, are approved and confirmed. Now
Hmm.
we think, okay, the lawmakers, well, Congress is the lawmaker. Congress doesn't make law. They just, they're a bunch of idiots who basically approve laws. They don't even read them, as we know, right? So, man, you got to think about this. If everything that the president does, as far as orders, executive orders, and all, that's why you always hear about these executive orders. Well, why can the president send troops into a country without a declaration of war, which we've done 50 times? It's
Right.
because the president's a dictator. Congress made him a dictator. They voluntarily did this. They can stop this at any time, but they don't. This is current U.S. code. Okay, Title I, Section 1. It's U.S. Code Title 1295B is the section, War and the National Defense, right? Now, the other thing you need to know, in 1933, where this sort of usurpation of powers came about, this is James Beck speaking in his congressional record. I think of all the damnable heresies that have ever been suggested in connection with the Constitution, the doctrine of emergency is the worst. You understand a declaration of emergency. They did it for 9/11. They did it for the flu. They did it for the COVID. They did it for, you can do it for anything, because the declaration of emergency is the same as a declaration of war under the law of necessity, and it suspends everything. Here's what he says. It means that when the doctrine of emergency is the worst, it means that when Congress declares an emergency, there is no constitution. This means it's death. It is the very doctrine that the German Chancellor, Hitler, is invoking today in the dying hours of the parliamentary body of the German Republic, namely, that because of an emergency, it should grant to the German Chancellor absolute power to pass any law, even though the law contradicts the Constitution of the German Republic. Hitler is at least frank about it. We pay the Constitution lip service, but the result is the same. The Constitution of the United States, as a restraining influence in keeping the federal government within carefully prescribed channels of power, is moribund, if not dead. We are witnessing its death agonies, for when this bill becomes law, and it will become law, there is no longer any workable constitution to keep Congress within the limits of its constitutional powers. The vast range of powers taken together confer enough authority to rule the country without reference to normal constitutional processes, right? Under the powers delegated by these statutes, the president may, and he's actually reading from the laws of the United States. The laws of the United States actually say, I mean, the Communist Manifesto was alive and well in the United States. Under these powers, under a declaration of emergency, an executive order, under the powers delegated by these statutes, the president may. Now, I want you to listen to this. This is your so-called freedom. This is your so-called constitutional society. There's no constitution. It's if a constitution can be suspended, there is no constitution because it can be suspended like that at the drop of a hat. Under the powers delegated by these statutes, the president may seize property, organize and control the means of production, seize commodities, assign military forces abroad, institute martial law, seize and control all transportation and communication, regulate the operation of private enterprise, restrict travel, and in a plethora of particular ways control the lives of all American citizens. That is the truth. That is coming straight from a congressional document. Now, there's another document that says this as well. I want people to read this. Okay, write this down. Senate Report 93-549. Entitled, that's Senate Report 93-549, commissioned by the Special Committee on the termination of the national emergency. So the Congress got together. Should we terminate the No, we shouldn't, was the rule. And here's what the report's introduction says. Since March the 9th, 1933, again, this is the year that everybody says the bankruptcy happens. Well,
right.
You could say the moral bankruptcy, sure. The political bankruptcy, absolutely. Financial? No, these guys have more money than you can possibly imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. The United States, since March 9th, 1933, the United States has been in a state of declared national emergency. So since 93, we've been under a national emergency, which means the Constitution has been suspended since. This was in 73, this report. A majority of the people of the United States have lived all their lives under emergency rule. For 40 years, freedoms and governmental procedures granted by the Constitution have in varying degrees been abridged by the laws brought into force by states of national emergency. And in the United States, actions taken by the government in times of great crisis have, from at least the Civil War, which when the nation state took over, defeated all the so-called southern states.
Right.
In important ways shaped the present phenomenon of a permanent state of national emergency. This has not changed, folks.
Yeah.
This is the world and the nation, corporation, basically, that we live in. You can quote the Constitution all you want. However, Congress is telling you it's suspended. Anytime the president acts under these, again, anything the president does is already approved by Congress. The show that they have, let's impeach Donald Trump, it's a show.
Right.
Congress can't even do anything because they've already approved anything the president does. This is why the office of president seems so whacked, right? So crazy. So this is the truth. This is the world we live in. This is the source documentation that you can look up yourself and start to understand, because if you don't understand it, you're never going to figure out why you can't be free. You're never going to understand when we say you're a prisoner of war, you're a prisoner of emergency. You're a prisoner of a dictatorship declared by Congress in 1933. You want to call that a bankruptcy? I guess you can, right? But this is what we mean when we say you are a prisoner of war. Now, you've been offered you've been given a legal system that is traditional, and you're either going to utilize it or you're not, or you're going to you're going to pretend this false patriotism. You're going to pretend that the Constitution still governs government, which Congress just told you that it doesn't, right? The courts tell you that they are the lawmakers, that they are the ones that say whether a law, is good or not, and they change it. Nothing. The whole Justice Department, right? When you're talking about courts, where is the Department of Justice? Oh, well, it's a separate entity. It's one of the three branches of government. No, it's not. The entire Department of Justice was moved into the executive branch by Congress. There is no judicial. The only judicial left, I think, is the Supreme Court, if I'm not mistaken. Everything else, everything you're going to do, right? That's why the Supreme Court won't hear us. Everything you're going to do is the Department of Justice. It is an executive, artificial justice system. This is one of the reasons we want you to start embracing equity, because equity doesn't really exist. It's like the moral compass of the legal system. Equity is like a softener for the harshness of the law, right? It's the if there is such a thing, it's the moral, concept of, okay, the law is very, 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 very bad. We need to, lessen it. So that's where trusts lie, is in this sort of what is left of this system of equity. So I really just wanted to get that out. I'm sorry to take up so much time on it, but you have to understand your disposition.
Right.
Stop calling yourself free. Stop saying stop saying you're the people. Stop saying there's a constitution.
Right.
That was defeated. It's gone. One other thing, just to be clear, every state constitution, every state had to rewrite their constitutions, resubmit it to be approved by the United States, to be a state of the union, because they're all conquered. And every state in the union did this as the same paragraph in every state, and that is that the people of the state give up all public lands to the federal government, all rights and title to public lands. When you hear that 83 or 87% of Nevada, for instance, 50 something percent of California, 80 something percent of Utah, and on and on and on, is federal lands, right? Public lands. That's because the states were, as conquered states, conquered people, right? They were forced to, in their constitutions, assign the public lands to the federal government.
Yeah.
And the federal government is not giving those up. Okay? That is the real world. So we're trying to get you to act privately, not in the public, not in those areas that are federal. So that, to me, just puts it takes a giant crap on the entire patriot movement, if you ask me.
It really does, and all the facets that encumber in that. And a lot of times I see, because I read IRS cases all the time, and you can even go on the IRS website, go on the frivolous, what are they called? The frivolous claim section, something like that. Frivolous arguments section. And in there, because a lot of people, especially in the truth movement, will say, well, I'm not subject to paying taxes because of the Constitution. It's unconstitutional. Well, go look in the IRS website on the frivolous section, and they'll say that that's been proven wrong time and time again in case law. And they're the counting function of the U.S., and they have the police power because they have the DOJ giving them that police power. And so, like Clint said, the DOJ, they're executive. They're not even a branch of government. And so,
I mean, you have to stop thinking of yourself, really.
Right.
I'm a sovereign. Well, that's comparing yourself to a god, right? You are all powerful. We have to come down off of that pedestal that we've put ourselves on. Think about all the other countries out there. Nobody has that opinion, right?
Right.
The gurus do in other countries, and they're tricking people in other countries to do this. But it's the same basic business model: rip off people, tell them to do the paperwork, and
Yeah.
but I mean, if you were to proclaim this in most countries in the world, you'd be executed. You'd be made a public spectacle. If you'd be in jail, you'd be
Yeah.
slow down a minute. Whatever romantic idea you have, as soon as you stop believing in history, man, everything changes. I'll just put it to you that way. I don't believe in, I don't believe in the Constitution. I have fealty to the founding fathers or their sons and daughters. I don't believe any of that, right? So I can see things for how they really are. They're a conquering, tyrannical royal family that has taken over the world through the nation state model.
Yeah.
It's practically, I mean, if you look for it, you can find it. But why would you look for that if you think you're free and that the Constitution protects you because you're one of the people? Again, you are not the people. United States citizens are not even part of the people. They're not even part of the states. They reside in the states, but their
Yeah.
domicile is the United States, which is Washington, D.C. That's not that's not the states united. That's not the people in a union, a spiritual union. No. So come off of your high horse, forget this patriot mythology nonsense, and again, look at how things really are and what is available to you. And that's, again, I'm putting a lot of faith and trust in this particular gentleman, because for the first guy that actually understands this, and is coming from this other perspective, with the perspective that, yeah, basically everything we've learned is false. We need to utilize what's available to us, or we
Yeah.
can just remain in denial and keep following these gurus who's every single one of them is basically telling you that you're God, you're a
Yeah.
sovereign,
Yep.
and that's their foundation. Well, we're here telling you what you don't want to hear. You're a prisoner of freaking war, and therefore you're very limited in what you can actually do.
Yeah, it's best to acknowledge it. And when he said that, they call you sovereign as a god. That's what the cults do. Whether it's masonry, or the other similar branches, they all tell you the higher you go into the organization that you're a god, and that when you die, you'll get your own planet ruled, that you rule as a god. That's what they all tell you. And so it's just an exact replica. It's just a different brand under the Patriot brand.
You're forgetting the 72 virgins. I don't
Oh,
know where
yeah,
all those virgins are going to come from, but
yeah.
don't forget those.
Yeah, yeah. From the spirit world, supposedly. So yeah, and so we're setting the foundation, because this is a very important foundation to work off of before we get any further into this secret trust thing. And we're gonna bust more of that. And I'm sure we'll mention UCC and what's the other thing called? Accepted for value. Yeah. So I'm gonna share my screen, guys. I want you guys to look at some websites. So I pulled this up. I'm just looking for websites that talk about the Cestui Que Vie Trust. And I thought this one was funny. It's called The Real Truth, revealing unbiased truth to the world. So I thought that's funny. So yeah, I mean, and guys, these guys just copy and paste, basically their little fake history of.
Exactly.
So the Cestui Que Vie Trust
Buy a
is.
sweatshirt.
Oh,
Then you can
wait.
have the real truth on your lapel.
So I'm confused. How come these guys are selling these courses and services and selling sweatshirts if they can access the trust money?
I know, right?
If this thing was real and I accessed the trust money, let's say the millions of dollars, I would keep this private. I wouldn't tell anyone.
I mean, isn't that the truth, right? Isn't that the whole private sector is secretive about. I I suppose that's probably the thing that bothers me the most is where's the proof? Where have
Exactly.
any of these guys who are telling you what to do ever shown you their proof that they've
No.
done it, that they've got some, you know, besides the fact that they wrote a letter and that no one responded. That's their proof.
Right.
No,
Right.
sorry, that's not how it works.
Yeah, and we'll show some of those fraudulent documents later. A, a follower of mine actually sent me some and thought it'd be funny for us to present. So shout out to her. But yeah, so anyways, so this website, again, they're copy and pasting what everyone else says. Bankruptcy of 1933 and ceasing of the citizens' gold and silver and other assets as collateral. This account contains millions of dollars in your name. The only
See, there's
problem is
there's that 1933, right?
there it is. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That was when the Banking Act and the Farm Bill is really
Ah,
what the big thing was.
right.
So
So the whole thing's confused. And so again, you're worth millions of dollars, your name. The only problem is the government and legal system failed to inform you about it and how to access your money. In the meantime, they're drawing down on it for their own personal use. And as payment to the Vatican and the English crown, I hear about the Vatican and English crown all the time. There's so much mythology about those two things. I mean, that's a whole nother show. So it's the funds contained in the Cestui Que Vie that the judge, clerk, and county prosecutor are really after or interested in. Oh, it's not because you committed a crime or caused controversy to put yourself in that courtroom, right? It's because the judge wants to access your money. So this trust actually pays all of your debts, but nobody tells you because the elite consider those assets to be their property, and the Federal Reserve System is responsible for the management of those investments.
so you're telling me that instead of just making an appropriation, meaning creating money out of thin air by a legislative bill, you're telling me that the power of government that has its own bank, it is the
Mhm.
bankers, the only banker in the that is the product of the United States is its
Right.
money, right?
Yeah.
You're telling me that it goes through this elaborate process of this instead of just saying, hey, Treasury, hey, we're gonna just print $2 trillion. We'll charge it to the public. They don't care. They're gonna charge it. They're just gonna let it go to their kids. Why would you go through this much trouble when you could just print the freaking money anytime you want to,
And that's what they do. I mean, look what happened
or
in
write
20.
it off?
Yeah, look what happened in after the 28 financial crisis. They implemented quantitative easing, which was trillions of dollars, the money creation. What happened in 2020? Again, another wave of QE, the quantitative easing. And so that involved, creating the dollars. What was it? I think it was 30 to 40% of the US money supply um, was created in that second QE period.
Well, if you want to really understand where the the money itself is merely a tool of control, right?
Right.
The amount of money that's circulated for us is specifically limited to keep us
Mhm.
limited. If you want to know where the real wealth lies, it's in debt. This is why they always buy
Yeah.
debt because it's a promise to pay, but also in this thing called derivatives.
Right.
We're talking we're talking quadrillions,
Mhm.
a number you can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Uh,
MBS is.
and whatever the next thing level is after quad, right? You're talking about so much artificially created money, a derivative of the money system, something that
Right.
doesn't actually exist. It is so much that, and it was so much 10 years ago, right? That it's not even fathomable. So
Yeah.
they're not going to create money to rob everything. They create what's
Yeah.
called derivatives and all these special financial tools that are essentially debts that'll never be paid.
Right.
This whole Cestui Que Vie thing would be I mean, just applying logic to it
Mhm.
would be. I mean, it just would be
It'd be
so.
economically disastrous.
It would be pointless. It would. You
Yeah.
have all this power. You have ultimate sovereign power, and you're gonna do that? No, you don't need these dramatic schemes. All you got to do is have
Right.
a massive investment portfolio, use pension funds to create globalism, invest all over the world, build these
Yeah.
countries, China, Russia up, and you've got control over all the corporations because you own all the stock. Why do you need this Cestui Que Vie thing? It's
Right.
completely irrational. It's, I don't know what to say. It's just use your logic, guys.
Yeah. It's ignoring basic economics, but also too, even the advanced economics is ignoring banking functions in mechanics. And so the people that purport this kind of thing, they don't have that sophisticated knowledge. To go back to derivatives, I mean, trillions, over 3 trillion a day on the US stock market alone are traded in derivatives every day, changing hands constantly every day, trillions. And I participate in that. I trade futures and option derivatives, which is different than the mortgage-backed security derivatives. That's traded in a market, secondary market. And those derivatives are, a lot of them were created, behind closed doors, but really managed by people like Larry Fink. And Larry Fink, he's not the grand brain behind it. He's just the useful idiot. So he gets all the liability if anything, controversial comes out of that. Now he's the face of that. Meanwhile, the real people behind it, you don't know their names,
And you
but
blame the dummy corporation.
you blame the dummy corporation, which is BlackRock or Vanguard.
But I mean, essentially, isn't that kind of what we're trying to say you can do too?
I'm always trying to show people that because a lot of
Yeah.
people, when I tell them we can do what they're doing on a macro scale and a micro scale for ourselves, a lot of people in the alternative space, when I tell them about the dummy corporation or the LLC that we create, a lot of them get scared of that and they think, oh, it's evil for me to use a company that's playing their game. And it's just like, okay, but you don't
No,
understand.
it's
They gave
evil
us
to act in person. I can give you 50 verses from the Bible that says, do not respect these things.
exactly. See it for what it is. I see it as a tool. The LLC is a tool. Money is a tool. It's not it's not what saves us, but it's what
It's more of that. It's that you can't use the tool without the vessel, right? I mean,
correct.
you can't have a bank account without a company or a person. You can't have this. You
Yeah.
can't do this without the monopoly piece, right? The game board.
Yeah.
You have to have that, and to make yourself surety and in bond to it through personhood is really. It was a great scheme and it worked, and we all registered our children through our children. But it's time to stop that. Stop that cycle of voluntary servitude and start protecting ourselves like they do with their own assets. And for that matter, stop being indebted to them. I mean, stop being debtors.
Yeah.
And that's another reason, by the way, why the United States also cannot be bankrupt. It's not a debtor.
Right. Exactly right. So speaking of debt, now these gurus will continue to say that Social Security, SSI, SSD, Medicare, and Medicaid, they're all financed by the secret trust. The government
No,
makes you pay taxes, and a portion of your wages supposedly pay for these services, which they can borrow at any time for any reason, since they cannot access the Cestui Que Vie Trust to finance their wars or bail out Wall Street and their patriarch. You don't. Wall Street does not need bailing out. You don't understand. They don't need to access the Cestui Que Vie Trust to do that.
and Wall Street is a couple corporations. That's all Wall Street
Right.
actually is. It's trading companies. They're,
Yeah.
you know, it's not like Wall Street is no, it's a few companies that handle trading. It's not as
Right.
dramatic as you think,
It's a private association as well. And
right?
so, okay, so here we go. You may receive a monthly statement from a mortgage company, loan company, or utility company, which usually has already been paid by the trust, the secret trust. Almost all of these corporate businesses double dip. Oh, I've heard this a lot. And hope that you have been conditioned well enough by their credit scams to pay them a second time. Instead of paying that statement next time, sign it, approved, and mail it back to them. Oh, again, it's like you can fix everything through the mail. So if they then contact you about payment, ask them to send you a true bill instead of a statement, and you will gladly pay it. A statement documents which was due and paid, whereas a true bill represents only what is due. Banks and utility companies have direct access into these SQV trusts, and all they needed was your name, SSN, and signature.
I remember this one. This is the one where they say, take your bill.
Yeah.
And do something to it to make it a check, and then go cash the bill for the amount that they're charging you for. And of course, how did you spend that money on cigarettes in jail?
Yeah, because I mean, we've seen time and time again where that leads you, and that is jail. So yeah, again, this guy's just repeating the same nonsense. Here's another website. I don't think it's just going to say the same stuff. And so look, the SQV, it was a real historical thing, and so I want to go through what it actually was.
Well, before you do that, technically, because we were talking about how a trust works, where there's the trustee and the beneficiary, that the one with the use of the land is not necessarily the owner, and therefore it is a dead use. In other words,
correct.
So they still do call the beneficiary a Cestui Que Vie, right? Because the beneficiary hasn't acquired it yet, and therefore, so that's Cestui Que Vie in its basic kind of form. But in this case, we're applying this. Well, the queen, right? The corporation of the crown. You're out of this. What is it? Out to sea or whatever?
Lost beyond the sea. Yeah.
Beyond the right. So, and the sea is, of course, the Vatican spiritual jurisdiction, and it just goes on and on and on. But really, the proper use of the Cestui Que Vie is like if you have a mortgage, a dead pledge mortgage, well, then you're in a Cestui Que Vie situation, right? Because so you're the eventual beneficiary of something that you don't own at the moment. Is that a good way of saying it?
That is, and I'm glad you said that, because that also blows out the narrative that these people purport that, oh, well, you're the beneficiary of this SQV, and so therefore you can access the benefits right now.
Oh, well, I'm going to call up the Queen and the Pope and say, hey, let's expedite the process.
Right. And then the funny thing is that people believe this trust exists. Show me the trust documents. No one can show me the trust documents.
Well, I mean, how do you go back to 1960s or
1666? Yeah,
right. I mean, it's probably it's in the Vatican vaults, so we can't access.
Oh, that's right.
Right.
Yeah. So again, the Cestui Que Vie was a historical thing. So I want to cover that before we go any further, because I do want to present some case law on some funny stuff. But Cestui Que Vie translates in French to "he who lives." It's a legal term for an individual who's the beneficiary of a trust or an insurance policy with rights to property and the income and profits that the property provides. A Cestui Que Vie trust is the person entitled to an equitable rather than legal trust in the estate assets. And so I won't need to read that. It just kind of goes on. History. Okay, here we go. As a legal concept that dates back to the medieval period, specifically England, during this time, the owners of farms or other properties could be absent for extended periods of time as they traveled, whether for business or religious purposes. And it became important to ensure that family members, business partners, or tenants could use the property without fear of being exploited by feudal lords. While the individual was away, a trustee took care of the land, but did not retain legal ownership over the property. Right. And so the trust often relied on good faith understanding between the parties. And so, when this happened historically, you really had to trust the trustee in order to have this kind of deal. And a lot of times during this time period, they would have an old man that they trusted. Typically, it was like their neighbor that they trusted, and they would just let this guy be the trustee. And
or
so
a completely neutral party like an attorney. You could this would
yeah,
be an example where you could use an actual bar attorney.
right. And sometimes they are useful for that kind of stuff, where it's a
Well, they'd
neutral
actually be
party.
regulated. They'd actually have a code and a so-called ethic and honor among thieves to their canons and that kind of thing. So at least there's
Right.
that. But like you said, this is they don't say it's not called a trust for that's not a colloquialism. You really do have to be in a position of trust with the people you're doing commerce business with.
Right. And the SQV, I mean, it's only relevant in English law. And I already hear some people say, well, we're under an English law. And okay, I mean, but good luck saying that in the court. I mean, it's just, you're going to be laughed at. And we did
Well,
adopt
that
a
mean
lot of the English law, but
yeah,
we
and
made it our own.
we adopted the Bible as the foundation of our common law. So
Right.
you better get on. You better get reading.
Yeah, it's a pretty good manual. And so, okay, and it goes on. So talks about Henry VIII, how he allowed descendants to reside and enjoy the estates, right? And Thomas Cromwell, Thomas More, they attempted to invalidate this SQV trust, a process that still continued, though, under the English Reformation. Okay. So, that's the basic synopsis of the history. And, some of the websites like these, they go into the, let's say, the Patriot version of that history, right? It sounds good to anyone that kind of doubts government, right? But again, it gets into some woo-woo stuff. And so, all right. So now I want to show you guys some case law. This is actually a pretty recent case last year. I pulled this one up. Well, actually, I'm going to show you guys a PDF because I highlighted some stuff. So yeah, so this guy, he was using this method that a lot of these gurus will tell you to do if you ever have to go to court. They'll tell you to get around the ruling, the jurisdiction by claiming this Cestui Que Vie Trust. Okay. And this is funny. And this made it all the way to the Court of Federal Claims. It's funny how they called this guy, well, first they say lack of jurisdiction, sovereign citizen allegations. So I thought that was funny. So here we go. So Marcel James Lamar Wood, he was seeking declaratory or unspecified monetary relief arising from the United States. And again, he's using this Cestui Que Vie thing and saying that they misappropriated his estate. And so, and then they say the legal fiction underlying plaintiff's claim is insufficient to establish jurisdiction in this court. Therefore, the court dismisses plaintiff's complaint. And so this guy, he alleges that, and he said this in court, and he submitted documents saying this, United States was and is acting as the custodian of his estate because pursuant to the Cestui Que Vie Act of 1666, and again, this whole 1666 thing was in England, not in the U.S. But anyways,
what makes them think that act of the crown
yeah,
applies to the United? Why would a judge? Oh
right.
well, I mean that would mean you'd have to look at what else, all the other documents from the crown. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
Although the Patriot mythology is that the crown owns. Yeah, so I
I was
guess
just gonna
maybe
say, yeah.
does make a little bit of sense in
Oh,
that.
and they
In that,
claim the Magna Carta is the only true lawful
well, I
document.
mean, go back to that first statement, the legal fiction underlying the Platon's claim. They're basically saying that, look, dude, you've got the wrong fiction. We're
Right.
legal fiction. You're talking about, again, what we call the Patriot mythology. This is
Yeah.
you're in the that's the wrong fiction for any jurisdiction. I mean, you've made up a complete 100% untrue story with using historical facts to make it sound reasonable.
Right. And so it goes on to say, because of this act that he's citing, it presumes that he's dead or abandoned in his estate. And it goes back to that history that a lot of these gurus teach, is that because of this act of 1666, you're still considered dead, lost at sea, or abandonment of your estate. And so this guy, he further alleges that neither presumption is accurate. He's alive and he has not abandoned his estate. He represents, to support his allegations, he attached this complaint evidence of, okay, so it goes on. So this first document that he submits to the court is called Notice and Warning to Utility Companies. And so the key allegation in this document is a reference to the bankruptcy. Oh, sounds familiar, doesn't it? Of the United States that purportedly occurred in 1933. And it goes on, it was passed in 1933. We only had debt because all property and gold were seized by the government as collateral in the bankruptcy of the United States. So you see, it's the same jargon that this guy is repeating. This means there is no money. It further means that since there's no money, American signatures are used as the credit to run this country. That in turn means that it is the American people who are the creditors, not the debtors, as the banks and utility companies would like everyone to believe. Verbatim what I just read earlier. And
Oh my
so,
God, it is.
yeah,
That's so funny.
every
Back,
judge, yeah,
parents.
it's bad. Every judge and attorney in America, this is what this guy's saying, especially those who hold positions with several direct connections to the utility companies, bank accounts, and acting as attorneys for the banks, most presumably in all other countries as well, since they got their instructions from England. Where do you see that? Anyways, the same place that all the banks get their instructions, through the comptroller of the currency headquarters in London, England.
I'm sure he means the city of London, but he didn't say.
I was just gonna say that's completely different than London.
Right. It's not even part of London.
It's not even a part of the UK.
Right. It's just like DC is not a
Right.
state.
Just like the Vatican. It's not part of Italy. So each knowing the above incorporated to be true, and it goes on, again, it cites the U.S. bankruptcy of 1933.
Oh, the bankruptcy. Well, I mean, that's instant failure right there when you say the bankruptcy.
We've covered that. Operates under English law, though it's supposed to be a well-kept secret. So, okay, so these guys.
There is no money?
Yeah, there is no money because we've been bankrupt.
I mean, it's one thing to say, the value of money doesn't exist. To say there is no money, that's like doubting existence. That's like nihilism. How do you make that kind of statement without clarifying?
Well, if there's no money, Clint, how did he pay the fees to submit these documents into the court?
Well, the real question is, if I am able to say there is no money, how did I know that money is even a word? How do I know? Because the Hegelian dialectic is all about the negative reinforcements. And so you're always saying something doesn't exist, even though you know it does, right? So it's...
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, it would make more sense to question the real intrinsic value of the money, since we went off the gold standard and whatnot. But even then, it's still backed by oil, which it has this utility, actually. A lot of people, especially these gold bugs, they scoff at the fact we went off the gold standard, but really it was actually more efficient for us to go on the oil standard. that's a whole
Well,
nother episode, but
this is a case where, again, we should not be confusing legal or inherent things with market things. Okay,
mhm.
if you go to either the federal CAFR or the Federal Reserve CAFR, once again, the audit, you will see that the gold that is held, yes, it is held in Fort Knox. It hasn't been stolen. It hasn't. It's in
Right.
several. It's actually in several different vaults,
Yeah,
according to the audit.
a lot in New
Right?
York.
If you read that, it's going to tell you. Think about it this way: if you're going to start a country, right? You're going to start anything. You're going to start a corporation, right? Are you going to start that corporation knowing that on a commodity that could go up or down at the drop of a hat, could go to zero at the drop of a hat, or no,
Right.
they create any country that holds gold, creates or inducts that gold as it's not collateral, it's the other word because it doesn't actually collateralize the dollar, but they actually have a statutory for
Mhm.
all you people who think the market price of gold means anything, right? The statutory price of the millions of troy ounces of gold that are held by the Federal Reserve, or excuse me, held in the vaults, the certificates of them are held by, I want to say, Federal Reserve or the government. Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve then uses those certificates at market value to commit crime, right? To
Right.
invest. But the gold itself in both audits is statutorily, at the time of its induction, was priced and has never changed at, I want to say, $29.02 or 99 29.99 29.922222222. Okay, that is the actual
Yeah.
value of the gold that is held by. That's what everything is based on. All the other
Mhm.
gold, all the other, none of that matters. The gold that's held by the United States has a specific price, and it is $29 and
Yeah.
0.2222, so 2 ninths basically.
And it's been that way for
That's the
decades.
price of gold. No, it's not going to change. It's the statutory price. Every
Yeah.
country is the same way because you're not going to base your whole economy on something that's controlled by the gold fixing in the Rothschild Bank in the city of London, where we
Right.
have an office and we all get together and decide what the price of gold's going to be. No,
Yeah.
no, that would be ridiculous. So we, for some reason, that information is not made
Hmm.
privy to most people. And so when I oh, gold, that gold coin is worth $1,800 or whatever it is, right? But
Yeah.
you got to realize that completely artificially inflated price, and then the Federal
Yeah.
Reserve uses those certificates at that price to do its trading. So I mean, it's just more organized crime. But
Yeah.
you want to know, in my opinion, if you're holding on to gold and people say it's going to go to 100,000, it's going to 10. Well,
Right.
that means the value of the dollar is going to go, and you're gonna have a gold coin that's worth $10,000, which you if you burn it, it'll probably be the best use of it because that gold is only worth. It's going to go, if anything, it's going to go back to its statutory price and never
Mhm.
under. Right? So
Yeah.
the whole thing, again, completely false market used by the elites,
Right.
not only to fool you, but to get an artificial value that they can then trade as a derivative. I mean, it's
Yeah.
everything is false. Like it's shocking.
Oh, but in the Patriot circles and even other circles, it said, Clint, that these elites, they drive and manipulate the gold price down when it's actually the opposite. They actually drive it up. And so, again, these gold bugs, that's a whole nother religion, the gold lovers. I used to invest heavily in gold, but then I sold it all when I realized it's not working for me. That money.
Gold, gold, it's, as an investment, it serves one purpose. And look,
Mhm.
again, you have to know your place. In the Bible, what do? They build a golden calf, right? They
Right.
offered that golden calf to because they knew their civilization, their kingdom was ending, and therefore their
Yeah.
status within the kingdom was also, and their property was going to end. So they put it all in gold in order to carry what they had in the old system into the new system. That gold is an offering to the king to get their status back and their property, right? The new
Yeah.
king, same as the old king, right? It's the same family, same whatever. So
Yeah.
gold is a hedge against, but even that is really,
It's not.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, in reality, it's kind of not, because again, if your
Uh-huh.
gold is worth, if your gold is suddenly worth five, however much they're saying it's going to be, that means that the dollar itself is going to be, you know, worthless. So yeah,
Yeah.
great. It's you're not going to eat it, you're not going to plant it, you're not going to wipe your butt with it.
Yeah.
You don't need gold. You're not gonna have enough. You're not gonna trade with it. I'm gonna guarantee no one's gonna want gold. They're gonna want toilet paper, alcohol, cigarettes, and whatever else they can. Food. How about food?
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it's
I-
just the whole thing. Again, more. But remember, it's what the advertising, and it's what GCN, where Alex Jones and what's his name, is, they are a gold trading company. You want to ask
Mhm.
me, probably one of the number one people behind the rise in the price of gold was that particular outfit. Jones, Alex Jones, and those guys constantly promoting gold. Well, guess what? They invested in the gold long ago when it was a couple hundred
Yeah.
or less, and watched it climb. That's why these organizations have that much money, because you got to keep in mind, I mean, you know this, obviously. When companies, or when you see an ad, or someone comes along and says, "Hey, there's this penny stock I want you to buy,"
Oh, geez.
and all of a sudden all these people buy it. Well, guess what?
It's a
The
pump and
price
dump.
went up. But that guy bought it when it was even lower, so he just made all kinds of money by a bunch of stupid people going and buy a penny stock that they
Yeah,
know nothing about.
it's the
Right? That's how
classic.
that's how the whole system works. Gold is
Yeah.
no exception.
Yeah, it's the classic pump and dump scheme. And when you're the sucker buying into that penny stock, that guy, he's using you as liquidity to get out.
Using you as a tool.
Right. Useful tool. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
And we've all been tools. Like I said, this is why I'm so interested in this, because we've been tools long enough. It's time to stop being tools.
Yeah. Yeah, and I talk about this subject of gold and the investment purpose of it and all that kind of stuff, how it's not really the best investment in my 401k video on my YouTube. Um, it's the 401k video is titled how to stop your 401k from turning to a 101k. And so a lot of people that call me, they think that the best solution from opting out of the 401k to switching over to a self-directed gold IRA, that's even worse, because then you're stuck in one asset class, gold, and you know you're subject to the volatility of that one asset class. That's never smart. I'm not saying you should diversify into 50 different stocks. That's not really true diversification. You really want to allocate yourself into different types of assets. But anyways, that's a whole nother conversation. So, okay, to get back to this. So and again, I see this a lot where these gurus will tell you to submit this document called Schedule of Fees. Which again, the Schedule of Fees, it is a thing in a trust, but only the grantor or the settler, sometimes the grantor is called the settler, can create this Schedule of Fees. It's not the beneficiary that does that. The beneficiary cannot control the Schedule of Fees. That makes zero sense. So anyways, they tell you to submit this document. So this is what this guy did. And the plaintiff thinks that this is going to establish specific monetary penalties for various infractions related to the trust, which owns the copyright, trademark, and trade name Marcel James Lamar Wood trademark. Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is
How many
bad.
times have you heard of that same thing? Well, a cop pulled me over, right? A municipal police officer who knows really nothing about anything,
Yeah.
pulled me over, and I handed him my
Oh,
If you want to further, I'm going to charge you $400,000 for every half hour. And sure enough, that officer was like, okay, have a nice day, sir.
right. Like that. Like,
Really,
yeah.
really, did anybody ever get paid their $400,000 or whatever they're charging, $1,000,000? No, because it's completely illegitimate.
That's not how that works. Yeah. And
Oh, by the way, Brandon, I'm charging you for doing this show $1,000,000 a minute.
oh, okay.
I
Well,
expect payment. I'm going to send you my schedule of.
all
Oh, I
right.
haven't sent you my schedule of fees.
Well, listen, I'll have my trust pay for it. Okay. My secret trust. So, yeah. So anyways, this guy, oh, look at this, a $10,000 infraction for using my driver's license number or even my name. And
Mine. It's not your name.
exactly, it goes back to that. And oh, you required a signature under threat and duress or crazy. Oh man,
Oh, $1,000,000, $1,000,000 fraction, right? Oh, I'm sure they're just cowering. Oh
yeah.
my gosh, he's going to charge us $1,000,000.
So who's going to enforce that? And uh, anyways, that boggles my mind because for anyone to enforce that, that would be the court, right? And
Um,
if the court doesn't have
right, and I
jurisdiction
think
over
that's good.
you,
Well, that's a good point because the answer to most of these statements is yeah, you and what army? Because who's going to who are you appealing to that's going to back your claim, right?
right? That's the whole thing. So now the third document, first will and testament of the grantor. Again, in a trust, the grantor creates these documents, not the beneficiary. And so,
Okay, let me just say something here because I remember seeing these things. This is nothing new. The
yeah,
reason I think okay, I'll just use myself as the perfect example. I was completely ignorant of trusts and trust law. I didn't even want to have anything to do with them because I just thought they were bad. I thought they were, it's what the bad guys use. I don't want to have anything to do with what the bad guys use. Well, I've changed my tune now. I understand that the tool is not evil. It's the intent, right?
right.
So I would look at something like that and I would be like, gosh, that's so interesting. It's like reading Chinese because I don't know what the grantor is. I don't know what the will and testament. Hey, that's like biblical. So
Right.
I could look at these terms as an ignorant person and say, yeah, yeah, wow, that sounds so sophisticated. And so, wow,
Right.
he's using language that I'm really not familiar with. And therefore, it must be true. It must be accurate. And he's using it in such a way that it makes it sound legitimate. Well, yeah, once you learn it, then and what these words actually mean, and the responsibility of the grantor and the trustee and
Yeah.
yeah, it's not how. First of all, it's not how the law works that governs this.
Yeah.
Not to mention the terms themselves, which again sound all sophisticated, but
Mhm.
sophistication is not a good thing, folks. Sophistication is a very bad thing.
Mhm.
Look it up. Look up the word sophisticated. You'll understand what I mean.
Mhm. Some word magic. So, and yeah, so it's completely ignoring how trust law works. And you know what's funny? These guys, they'll claim to be the grantor and the beneficiary. Well, if you're all of those parties, that's not a trust. That's classic trust law. I mean, look, we've seen that
That's
over and over.
fraud.
That's an illegitimate trust. That's not even a trust. And so, yeah, it is fraud. And I've
But
presented.
but to be clear, that's the same thing as saying I'm. They use the same model for the so-called secured party creditor,
Right.
right? Right? Where you're the beneficiary and I can't remember the terminology at the moment, but you can't be the creditor and the debtor. It just doesn't work
Exactly.
that way. You can't be a debtor to yourself essentially.
Yeah, and I always tell people that believe in that secured party thing. It's like you don't understand banking functions. there's always going to be a debit to a credit or the other way around. It's a
Well, it's not meant for us. It's not meant for good people. It's meant for
exactly.
corporations to deal across borders and international law, uniform laws, UNIDROIT, all these different voluntary laws, as they call them, that you accept, arbitration, all these concepts in the UCC. UCC is commercial code. You're saying I want to be free and I had a, out of commerce, and you're saying you're going to use UCC, something created by a bunch of lawyers and
Lawyers.
created CPS and all these other horrible things. You're going to use UCC to be somehow, as an individual, not a corporation, right? Somehow free, and yet. It's all listed as, again, it's
but Clint,
fraud. It's against the law.
But my name is in all caps, so I'm a corporation, so I can use it.
Okay, Styles.
Yeah,
Styles.
You had a good video on this whole thing. I suggest you guys watch it on his Red Pill Sunday School YouTube channel. It's one of his recent videos, so I highly suggest you guys watch that. So anyways, this guy, he uses his mom in this case to claim that she was involved in this whole thing in this secret trust. And so that probably goes back to, okay, well, because she signed your birth certificate and all that, she's involved in a secret trust, right? So, okay, and then I hear this a lot too, that, oh, well, I can obtain the power of attorney over this secret trust and the trust security. Wait, a trust and a security are two different anyways. So, all right. In the next document, affidavit of correction. Oh, I'm so sick of these affidavits, like as if they do anything. Anyone can file any affidavit anywhere. It doesn't give any actual.
Yes, but if they don't respond,
oh, it becomes law.
That's when you know the affidavit had took effect.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Show me where that has worked. I mean, yeah, if people give this affidavit like it's a superpower in the legal realm. So, anyways, he is correcting an error on his birth certificate because the name on the birth certificate is in all capital letters, which must be considered a fictitious name, whereas the proper form should be written in undercase. All right.
Okay. Okay. Just to be clear, these are legal terms I'm going to tell you. You find these in the legal dictionaries. They're in my book, which I copied straight from the legal dictionaries.
Yeah.
Okay. There are two kinds of existence, artificial and real. Okay. Yes, you have the man and you have the person. The man uses the person as a vessel in commerce. Very simple. If you are using a vessel in commerce, you are considered to be spiritually dead. Okay.
Yeah.
That is a legal term. You can look that up. But if you are not, and you're acting in privately foreign from that, then you're considered what's the other term? Spiritually dead and politically dead. Okay? That means that they're looking at me as being not alive in their system, right? So
yeah.
If I'm spiritually dead, then I'm not being guided by the higher law and I'm participating. But if I'm politically dead, to them, they can't see me. I'm private. I'm foreign from them. Right? So these are the only two things that really apply to this kind of statement. Has nothing to do. I can use my name any way I choose to use my name. I'd be a fool to use my name when dealing with public things. And this all goes back to the rule that we all have to remember: stop trying to act privately in a public forum. You don't go to a public forum and say, I'm private. If they come to you, you say, private, but you don't
Right.
go to court and try to prove your privacy. You've already gone there because the person was summoned.
I mean, that's as public as a forum can get, is a courthouse. And so, this guy shows up. When they called the supposed dead person, he says that
Cestui
he's
Que Vie.
not. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He shows up. So it doesn't make any sense. How are you here then?
Well,
If
and
you're
aren't you just admitting that you're property of the crown? I mean,
Oh, that's
that
true.
you're
Yeah.
out. I mean, out of its borders, but you're going to go back someday and claim your property. I don't get it.
Right.
Ugh.
Uh-oh. He's got another document, Clint. It's called Knowledge of Facts and another of Life. Sometimes we
What?
see this. It's like some gurus will call it the nativity of birth or something like that, or the certification of live birth that they try to correct. And anyways, these documents are just woo-woo that say the plaintiff is indeed alive. And it references again the Cestui Que Vie Act of 1666. Oh, and then the plaintiff presents a declaration of trust. And he
Now,
identifies.
can I simply declare that a trust exists and therefore it does?
I mean,
It sounds like these people are, again, a trust. You can't really be an individual in a trust, but it sounds like these people are saying there's a trust and I am it. Like I
yeah,
trust myself. Who are you trusting? Who are you and
right.
who's being entrusted? I don't get it.
That it doesn't make any sense. And you can present a declaration of trust. Anyone can do that, but again, that doesn't. That's not how trusts work. And so, anyways,
Yeah, how do you even comment?
I can't even comment on that. It's just so left field. And so, the
Well,
final.
I'm assuming that this guy didn't write any of these, or if he did, he just filled in the blanks, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And nor did he title them himself. He didn't say this is my last will and testament. I just thought of that out of thin air. See, none of your thoughts are your own. That's the problem. You're hey, buy my paperwork.
Well,
Right?
yeah, here's the thing too. I mean, he's claiming this trust already exists, right? So for him to submit the declaration of trust for that supposed existing trust, you wouldn't be able to access that declaration of trust because you didn't create that. The government did, like this guy's saying. So that doesn't add up. And so and then he submits the last will and testament of Marcel James Lamar Wood. Okay. And so
You know
the
what sucks about this?
uh,
What really sucks is that I can go and I can look up all these terms, right?
yeah,
So they're choosing, the gurus are choosing terms that if you go and you look it up, sort of match what they're saying in a way, but not really, but yeah, in a
yeah,
way, right?
right.
And so there's no way just by looking up the terms to say, well, that's not right. You actually, again, you have to apply logic and reason, and you have to understand the entirety of
Mhm.
which is impossible, the entirety of the law, right? But you have and how these things apply. But what sucks about this is that they're not they're not using terms that make it obvious that it's fraud, right? It
Right.
really is. I mean, I just want to stop here and give these guys, whoever started this, give them a little bit of credit for applying such inventive, imaginary, concepts to otherwise kind of boring words, right? That
Yeah.
have a specific meaning and a specific use. They really have done a clever thing here, but at some point you do have to wake up to it and say, well, it's just not only does it not make sense, it's not logical, especially if you're going to mix patriot mythologies. We're free people because we fought the English and won the war against the crown, but yet the crown controls. And have you heard that the crown changes our social security?
Yeah, yeah.
Right, I read that document. You know what it was? It was an agreement between the United States and England that people who moved to England would pay Social Security to America. It had nothing to do with actually, the Queen controlling Social Security. It was purely a business arrangement between two sovereign nations. So again, and I pointed that out to the person who sent it to me. I said, look, I've come across this before. I read it, and this is what it says. And I highlighted that. Oh, no, 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 you can't go against the mythology. No, because then everything starts falling down. So you have to believe in everything they tell you, or you kind of have to believe in nothing they tell you. And I'm telling you guys, believe in nothing they are telling you. What we are telling you is coming from source documented materials. If you want to doubt us, and I invite anybody out there to come and please argue and say yes. But there's one caveat to that: evidence. Show us.
Right.
Show us what you've accomplished. Show us your Cestui Que Vie Trust. Show us that show us the check. Show us anything that proves any of this to be factual besides nothing, which is really what they're, you don't want a response, because if you get a response, well, that's bad, right? Then, but if you get no response, then you've won. No, that's not proof.
Right.
So I invite anybody to dispute what we're saying here, but bring the proof, bring the source, bring anything that is substantial other than your own clever paperwork.
Yeah. We don't want rhetoric. We don't want repeating the same rhetoric that your guru told you to say or what he said. Because again, we hear the same thing from dozens of gurus out there, and everyone else just, like he said earlier, copies them like a parrot. And this guy, he's doing the exact same thing on the websites that we looked at. And so, yeah, I have these conversations all the time with people, and I get the curiosity. Look, I understand that. I've looked into these things before too. I'm not innocent from that. It's attractive to anyone who is in the alternative space, but everyone always tells me, well, I know a guy, or I know a guy who knows a guy, and they told me that they've done this.
Well, it boils down to one and only one thing. It's what we said in the beginning. You're looking for redemption, and you're looking in all the wrong places, right?
Yeah.
Your redemption is one and only one thing. Eventually you're going to have to figure out that redemption requires following the law of nature. Stop respecting all these artificial things, persons, flattering titles. That is your redemption. That is when you are redeemed, is when you start following the law of God, basically. You're reborn into nature and its law. That is when you will be redeemed. Okay. None of this, all this is doing is pulling you further and further down into what you need to be redeemed from. And look, I'll be honest with you, man. That includes your stock trading, and this is all this shit. The reason I'm doing this is because I actually, I want to be able to trade in all my worldly stuff so that I can find some land and be private on it, right? That I can't do that without. I spent this whole time doing everything for free because I thought that was the right way to do it, and it was. It was for me and my journey and learning. It kept me neutral. It kept me on track. I never got tempted. I never found false redemption. Because I wasn't looking for money, right?
Yeah.
Now that I have figured it out, now I'm going to be a hypocrite to people, because now I'm like, well, okay, I can't do anything unless I can pay for it, right? I have to have some consideration. But so now that's where I'm gotten. That's why, I've already been canceled from the public, so I got to start a private membership association myself. That's where I'm going to have all my stuff. We're doing some businesses that we're not going to talk about for a while.
Right.
And I mean, it's this is a liberation. Like I can't tell you. I mean, to the things we're talking about and have planned in the future that will benefit everybody.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, I just can't. But to get there, I can't keep operating in this ridiculous mode of being impoverished, unhealthy because I don't have the money to eat right, uh, in order to give people shit for free that they don't even appreciate, right? Then they're going to call me a hypocrite when I need to. I'm done with that, right? I've done it, and now it's time to do things the right way. So, and I hope
Yeah.
that I can teach other people to do it the right way as well. So,
Yeah, and that's my whole point of doing this because I've kept a lot of my processes and techniques private for years because I didn't have to share it with anyone. I didn't need to make money out of it, but it's got to a point where it's like society needs to use these tools that we talk about. And I'm again, all this talk that we're doing, I'm not poo-pooing trust. Again, in Safe Haven, we use trust. I'm not poo-pooing using a company. Like a lot of these gurus will, they get people so irate at corporations, right? And then it makes people think that all corporations are evil. Um, but guys, I mean, you gotta you gotta earn cash flow somehow. What you gonna work as a W-2 employee the rest of your life? That's not what I want.
men are good or men are evil.
Yeah,
Okay, the tools, all of these things we're talking about, are specifically neutral.
yeah,
They're not. I mean, it's like saying that the thimble on the Monopoly board is inherently evil.
right.
No, it's the intent of who's using it, right? So
Yeah,
you can't say that persons or corporations are evil because behind the person that is the corporation is a bunch of men acting horribly evil.
yeah,
And that's where I say the public, you can't do anything against these guys in the public, right? They're
absolutely.
protected. So,
Yeah, and you know, these people that focus on the sacred trust, they they don't ever think, well, wait a second, why don't I start my own trust? Which we all can, but why don't you look into that instead of going down this rabbit hole, which doesn't even work as we demonstrate. So yeah, anyways, get back to this case. Uh, now this is what the court's saying about this guy. The complaint has all the hallmarks of a sovereign citizen suit. The plaintiff relies on a legal fiction to support a monetary claim that has no basis in the laws of the United States. And yeah, I have to agree with these guys. And this guy's a pro se plaintiff. Pro se just means you're representing yourself. And so when you're pro se, you're held to a lower standard, rather than you being represented in court. So you can say all sorts of wrong things, and the court will give you some leniency. But when you start acting like this, though, like this guy, Lamar or Marcel, they're going to be like, okay, this, like this says, this guy has no basis in the law. And so now it goes on because this guy's trying to challenge their jurisdiction like all these people do. It's ridiculous. And so the United States, as sovereign, is immune from suit, save it as consent to be sued. United States versus Sherwood. So I thought that was interesting. You know, it, so these people trying to sue the United States, I mean, good luck with that, man. That's not going to work. And so,
yeah, it's like it's no different than saying I can sue the king.
right, yeah, it's just, and so you want sovereign immunity, like these gurus claim that they can give you. Well, here's the only way you can get sovereign immunity is being the United States.
And I'll give you an example. The people, because they think they're the people, all the citizens, the U.S. citizens that are inhabiting the political public space of Nevada, or was it Nevada or Arizona? Nevada, right? They voted to take their public lands back, right? Go against the Constitution, take the public lands back, and so that Constitution sits there today and it has two statements. One was the original that all public lands and interest and right to them are seceded or ceded to the United States. And the second one says the people take back that right and not right, and it says that Congress, after 17 years or something like that, has still not agreed to this frivolous vote, right? Because
Yeah,
again, those citizens actually think that they are the people, that they
Yeah.
are the state. They are, it's, no, this is not how things work. Constitution suspended, all of that stuff that we talked about. So Congress will ultimately decide whether, I mean, if you think about it, that's almost like a lawsuit. It's almost like a,
Mhm.
hey, we demand we the majority demand our public lands back. They will decide whether they want to. If it's in the
Right.
best interest of Congress, yeah, they'd do it, but it wouldn't be because they voted for it, right?
Yeah.
So the same way with, and the Congress, when Congress is the United States, I mean, for all intents and purposes. So it's not like the state congressman came to the Congress and said, I appeal on behalf of my people to give back the public lands. That's not what happened, see? Because he is the people.
Yeah. And the court goes on to state, how they do have jurisdiction, contrary to what this guy's saying. We won't go through that. It's kind of boring, but anyways, to determine whether it has jurisdiction, the court discerns the true nature of the claim in the complaint is not constrained by the plaintiff's characterization of the claim. They cite some more case law. So that's what these courts do. They always cite case law, right? And it's like none of these guys can actually do that.
That in that sentence, they just said this guy's full of crap, basically.
That's exactly what they said. And guys, I don't mean to sound pompous or arrogant. It's just I'm I always get comments and emails and messages from people who are just so nasty to me, saying I don't know anything, and they claim all this stuff this guy's trying to do, and other stuff like the websites say, and it's like, so to me, this is just like, um, really, finally, I get a long format where I can show the actual basis of the things I present, because all these guys say in the comments or messages is just nasty rhetoric that doesn't mean anything, and it's so annoying. So guys, stop messaging me this BS. It's a waste of my time. It's a waste of your time.
Unless you have proof, which none of
Yeah,
them do.
right. Show me the case where you actually won using this technique. I'm waiting. Give me the case number.
Show me the money.
Right. So plaintiff's claim, as best the court can discern, is premised on his interpretation on his status. Interesting. As a person who is alive and who may have been presumed dead. His contention that his birth certificate does not accurately reflect his existence, and his assertion that his estate, Marcel James, blah, 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 requires him to be compensated by the United States. These are sovereign citizen type arguments where such plaintiffs attempt to convince courts that their status as sovereign citizens differ from the status of the fictional individuals. And again, I already hear people saying, well, it's because he claimed to be a sovereign citizen. Look, they're just using that as a general umbrella to describe this guy. Not all the guys claim to be sovereign citizens. And I understand that's a whole oxymoron of itself. But anyways, so yeah, these people will argue that his or birth certificate evidences a trust, and that he or she has the right to collect the funds in the trust. And this reports another case, Davenport versus United States, where this has failed. And so, it goes on and talks more about this. Here, another lawsuit, Rivera versus United States, where this guy claimed, oh, I have control over the individual trust account, and I claim this funds, and I'm going to sue you guys, just like this guy's doing. So, yeah, and again, they basically say, this guy, he's basing this whole thing off of 1933, which again, obviously incorrect. And so, yeah, this guy, he tries to assert that the court has no power over him. And someone tried this earlier, Ammon versus United States. And the alleged Cestui Que Vie Trust account is the United States Treasury. Appeal dismissed. He was presumed dead. The United States became the custodian of the estate and now owes him the interest of the estate.
Interest. What?
Right.
When was that established?
Yeah.
What rate? What's the rate of interest?
Right. Exactly. Show me the amortization rate, and show me the documents that show the amortization.
So, I mean, basically, what they're saying is that they owe him the lost equity of the estate.
Basically, yeah. I think that's what he's trying to say, but he doesn't even know how to say that, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, and again, they cite the Cestui Que Vie Black's Law Dictionary definition of Cestui Que Vie. It's the person whose life measures the duration of a trust, gift, estate, or assurance contract. And so, because he's citing British law, they say foreign law is not among the money mandating sources of law that fall within the ambit of the Tucker Act's waiver of sovereign immunity. And so the Cestui Que Vie Act of 1666 in English law cannot support Tucker Act jurisdiction for a claim in this court. And so sovereign citizens typically believe that when they use the proper capitalization of their names, they can redeem the funds held by the secret trust. And he's entitled to the interest of the estate. And so the legal fiction presented by plaintiff in the complaint is not based in law, but in the fantasies of the sovereign citizen movement. There is no jurisdiction in this court for the fictitious claims. More case law, Boeing Company versus United States. Allegations of such subject matter jurisdiction to suffice must satisfy a relatively low standard, but also noting that essentially fictitious claims do not meet the standard, quoting Shapiro versus McManus. So plaintiff's claim must be dismissed for lack of jurisdiction. Conclusion, the clerk's office is directed to dismiss the complaint for lack of jurisdiction. So there you go, guys.
I wish they would have been more honest with their conclusion.
I know.
I'm like,
They were being
this
nice to this
crazy,
guy.
this batshit crazy person needs to be arrested, and so he doesn't infect others with the misinformation. Let me give you a definition here. This is what you have to understand. The concept of sovereign citizen. I know a lot of people have finally come to understand that that's not a very good term to use, but they do use that for a reason. The reason, let me give you the understanding of why they say the sovereign citizen movement, because you have to understand we put the concept of citizenship very high, even though it's the lowest form of status you can have. Okay, it actually comes from the Roman law or English, common law. And I'm going to read from the 1828 dictionary of Webster here.
Okay.
In England, and this is for the word denizen. So when you think of a citizen, the third definition of denizen is a citizen. Okay? This is the third definition. A citizen is a denizen. A denizen is to make a denizen, to admit to residence with certain rights and privileges, or, as I've been saying, to enfranchise. Okay? Remember, to be enfranchised, to be incorporated. That's what they did with the slaves. They made a national status of voluntary servitude, voluntary slavery. Let me read you the first couple, and then you'll understand why sovereignty and citizenship cannot go hand in hand. A denizen in England was an alien who is made so in other words, someone that's foreign, someone that cannot have a lien put upon them. Okay, a lien, a unalienable, it's what that means, no liens. An alien who is made a subject. What is a U.S. citizen? A subject. Okay, so an alien who is made a subject by the king's letters patent, holding a middle state. This is where it's really important to understand the difference between the private people, private property in the states, and a public U.S. citizen that is a national citizenship, not part of the states. We are not Americans. We're not part of the states. We're not part of the States United. We are in a foreign jurisdiction, foreign district. Okay. So you hold a middle state between an alien, someone with no rights, and a natural born subject. So we are not natural born subjects as U.S. persons, but we're also not aliens. We're somewhere in between. That's why they say it's a denizen, right? A denizen of hell, basically. He may take land by purchase or device which an alien cannot do, but he cannot take by inheritance. Why? What do we keep telling you a trust creates? A trust creates a family. A trust creates a blood relationship where the property is passed from one to the next, an inheritance. Okay, persons of the United States are not inheritable, an inheritable bloodline. They're not. There's no blood in persons. Okay. Second definition: a stranger admitted to residence and certain rights in a foreign country. Okay, what have I been saying? A birth certificate creates domicile in the United States, takes you out of the state, out of the United States, and puts you in that district, Washington, D.C., which is a corporation called a nation state called the United States. A stranger, so you're born in the state, admitted to residence and certain rights in a foreign country. United States is a foreign country, a private corporation to the states. The states are all several or private from each other. So we're we're admitted, right? Admitted. Think about what that means. To residence, in other words, domicile in the United States, taken out of our states, plucked from the very thing that would give us all those rights we so desire. Ye gods, natives, or denizens of blessed abodes. So that tells you what citizenship is. So when they say, and they smirk, and they say you're part of that sovereign citizen, it's a complete, those two terms are so oxymoronic to one another. They're so opposed to one another. That's why they use the notion of a sovereign citizen, because it's an impossibility. You can't be both. It would be, and so you need to understand denizensship, um, especially for slaves. When slaves were incorporated, i.e., enfranchised into, again, to admit to residence with certain rights and privileges, or to enfranchise. I did a whole section on enfranchisement in my videos. That's what emancipation was. The slaves were freed from the state private holders and incorporated into the city on the hill, the nation, right? The Washington D.C. They got a national status of personhood, plucked, and that's where they existed as far as their law and their jurisdiction. Now they had this protection on them that they couldn't get. You could no longer lynch a guy because he had no status, no protective status. That's basically what now he's owned by the nation state, and that's what our parents put us into, basically, through the birth certificate process. That you have to understand that to go to court and make these dualistic as well as completely separate claims using both sovereignty and citizenship, right? Denizensship, in other words, fealty to a master and sovereignty where you are the master, and they're mixing these things in court. Of course you're going to lose. I mean, it doesn't even it makes no sense to claim to be both. But that's what they're doing with their claims, because you're saying I'm a master and yet I'm under the laws of this master. You can't. If you're the master, you got no law. That's a maxim of law. The king is not under any law.
Yeah. So I pulled up your UCC strawman bond video up because I want to show like some stills from that video. Where did you, what website, is this the New York Fed website that you got this on?
Oh, it's a bunch. It's the FBI website, or it could be the Fed, the Treasury Direct site. Yeah.
I'll show you guys the Treasury Direct site that he pulled up later, but I'm pretty sure this is from the New York Fed website that you had on this video. So yeah, it goes exactly what we were talking about. Proponents of this scheme claim that the U.S. government or the Treasury Department control bank accounts, often referred to as usury Treasury Direct bonds for all U.S. citizens that can be accessed by submitting paperwork with state and federal, and it goes on. So the scheme, like we said, it's called redemption, acceptance for value, the straw man, the secret trust, the Cestui Que Vie. Trainers and websites will often charge large fees for kits that teach individuals how to perpetuate this fraud. And so, they'll tell you, hey, you can get these bills of exchange, promissory bonds, indemnity bonds, offset bonds. I'll show you guys what these look like here later. Comptroller's warrants. Wow, that's really bold. In addition, other official documents are used outside their intended purposes, like IRS Form 1099A, 1099 OID, and 8300. So they really do believe, these gurus, that, or at least they teach, because I don't think a lot of them actually believe this stuff. The gurus teach that you can use their own forms, the IRS forms like the 1099A, and turn that into money. Anyways, so, they tell you to just, look out for this fraud. And let's see, I want to show the other. This is from the Treasury Direct website now. The next.
Excuse me.
So it kind of goes into the same thing. And, they talk about how, these people will tell you the United States went off the gold standard in 1933, somehow went bankrupt again. Difference between insolvency and bankruptcy. You can't go bankrupt when you are the bank. With the help of the Federal Reserve, government converted the bodies of its citizens into a capital value, just like we went over. So it goes on. Basically, everything that we've covered is just, these are on
filing UCC
Oh, there it is.
document.
There it is. With either the Secretary of State or of the person's residence or another state, they'll accept the filings. Each citizen is entitled to
remember what I said about it has to be an agency that will accept the filings, that cannot say, hey boss, I got another fraud here. No, they have to process them. That's why they have you send them to these specific places.
Yeah, exactly. It's their, just because they filed something doesn't make your claim right. Some of these offices have to file everything, even when they know it's fraud. So yeah, it's just, and it goes on. I mean, they talk about how the reality is. I mean, if you try to draft these things, that's fraud. And, I've listed the different counts of frauds earlier. There's like 6 different counts of fraud that you're committing. So I want to pull up these instruments, these fraudulent instruments that they share with people to use. So give me 1 second to pull that up. Are you guys having fun though? I hope this is, I hope not to really I hope not to
burst your bubbles.
Yeah. And look, guys, we're not trying to be doom and gloom. We're just trying to give you a way out of the potential criminal charges.
You'd think people would appreciate it, especially when you're, but I mean, in my entire time doing this, I'm like, doesn't it occur to you that every source I'm using is primary, right? Doesn't it occur to you that you should listen to not to me, but to the source?
Yeah.
And not to someone who gives you this false kind of hope kind of thing, doesn't that make a little more sense? But no, it boils down to a sense of religious following, essentially cult-like behavior.
It does. And I'm not disparaging anyone because, a lot of my clients, they
we went through it. We both have gone through it. I mean, it's understandable. It's just at some point, you can't hear us say this and just somehow forget that you heard it. And you're always going to know it's fraud.
Oh yeah. I get it. I fell for this stuff before. And so we got someone in the chat saying, please stop whispering secret trust. LOL. It makes it more believable.
Notice it's a secret trust instead of a private trust too.
Oh, right. Yeah. Very informative. Thoroughly enjoying the content. I almost went the revocation of election route to avoid taxes. So he's talking about Form 56 with the IRS. And I'm sure glad I didn't do it. And that's good because let me tell you guys, these same gurus that teach you this kind of stuff, the redemption stuff, they also tell you they can get out of being a taxpayer by filling out Form 56. And let me tell you guys, after reading a lot of case law on people trying to do this, that it goes bad. If the IRS made it that easy to opt out of taxes, I assure you that we would know by now that that was actually legit. And another thing, I assure you, they don't make it that easy to opt out of being a taxpayer with one simple form, guys. It's all about just stopping receiving wages, right? And not owning stuff. That's how you mitigate, your tax treatment. But I'm never going to tell someone I can get you completely out of the tax.
Trusts.
That
was me in your ear.
Oh my God, yeah.
The only difference between the gurus and you and me and everyone listening is that they're salesmen.
Right.
They're spin doctors. They're not just hearing it. They're not hearing it and wanting to do it. They're hearing it and wanting to make money from it. They're hearing it and wanting to absolutely harm other people, knowingly harm or allow other people to harm themselves. That's the difference between most of the people that fall for this, and I include myself, right? I could have gone down any of these routes, right?
Yeah.
But I waited. I wanted to know. Everything I do, I like to get to the bottom of everything before I even attempt, which is why I waited this long. And I'm glad I did, because I mean, look. So the only difference between these guys and the people that fall for it is really, it's a form of victimhood. It's a form of predatory behavior that I think most people aren't capable. Most good people aren't capable of.
Yeah. And I get looking into this stuff is really boring, honestly. And that's the whole point of these gurus techniques. They want you to not look into these things because it is drab, it is boring. There's a lot of different, I mean, it's hours and hours of research. And so they keep you busy over here doing other stuff, avoiding you from doing the actual due diligence. Okay, someone else in the chat says, fraud sounds like a bad time. Yeah, it does, man. I don't want to ever go to the court. Again, stay out of the public. So, okay, I'm going to pull up these fraudulent instruments for you guys to look at. They're pretty comical. So, yeah, thanks to one of my followers. She sent me these, thought they'd be funny to share with you guys.
So what is this?
So this is an indemnity bond. Yeah. Yeah, your indemnity bond. That's what it like that's an actual class of bond. Okay. Let's see if I can zoom in. Here we go. That's so blurry, but Little John Stewart, that's a funny name. Oh man, I don't mean to show this guy's SSN, but I mean he shared it on TikTok, so it's not like I'm breaking any confidentiality here. So yeah, he shows that. Guys, this is a fraudulent financial instrument. Do not do this. I mean,
what is it? I don't get it.
Well, it's a bond that you can turn in for money.
Are you saying he's trying to put them on? He's trying to trap them somehow. Yeah. Put a bond on them to pay him.
Yeah, he's sending it through registered mail.
Oh, see, that is, I mean, this guy's jailbait. Yeah, this is highly, highly fraudulent.
300 million United States dollars this bond is worth, supposedly. Wow, that's a lot, man. That's a lot.
I like how they printed it on what looks like bank paper.
I know, right? Yeah, and who knows if it's actual commercial paper, but they at least made it try to look like it was. And here's another one. Private registered offset and discharge bond, non-negotiable. Ooh, he got him. He really got him with that. Little John Stewart again to add it. Registered mail. Oh, geez. Again, another 300 million.
It's funny that he put his social security number.
I know. Maybe it's a fake one, but
I mean, that's again saying I'm Little John Sovereign with subject number. You know, like it doesn't make sense.
Here's a promissory note, guys.
Wait, what is the comment and did this TikTok
Tick,
friend sent
see this 100.
bond paper and it worked.
Oh, with Wells Fargo.
And it
All right.
worked.
Okay.
How do we know it worked?
Yeah.
Why are you sending this instead of the evidence that it worked?
Well, Clint, it's a faceless guy on TikTok. He's telling the truth.
Oh, faceless guy in China.
Yeah, right. Oh, look at this instrument ID number. Yeah, look at it. Secured, negotiable, transferable instrument, meeting all
Oh, wait.
requirements.
You're missing the greatest part. World citizens of the solar what
Oh,
does that say? I'm not even familiar with that word.
Monmatia.
Huh.
It must be from the Moors.
International promissory note. A promissory note?
You can't make this stuff up, man. Ancestral
Un
convention.
Wow.
Any
It
alteration
worked.
or erasure voids the certificate. Oh, here we go. All rights reserved without prejudice. Oh, geez, how many times?
Oh, so I covered that as well.
You
That's
did.
if you want a fallacy, that's a big one. And
Yeah.
you can just type it in and find that that's not what the purpose of that is not what gurus tell you.
It's completely different than what. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't give you any protection. It actually, in a lot of cases, gives
It
you
can
liability.
harm you. It can
Yeah,
harm you.
it's
Yeah.
gonna fire back on you because you don't know what you're doing. So yeah, so look at this. Meets all the requirements of UCC Article 3. So many Article 3 people out there. And again, look, guys,
Article 3 of what?
oh, they don't even say.
This thing, Article 3 of what? You know how many articles there are in how many documents? I mean, what
Right.
document is it?
Oh, look at this. Republic for United States of America.
Okay, again, United States is not a republic. The states were turned into republics, but the United States is a nation state. It's not a republic.
Right. Even if it was a republic, so what?
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing special. Like Clint says all the time, Russia's a republic, China's a republic. Doesn't make you any special. Anyways. So yeah, that's pretty fun. Oh, mandatory by law. Look at that. Oh,
Mm.
principles. Oh man, this is just so deep in woo-woo land. So I thought that was funny, guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that other document said. What was the word they used to explain it? Improbable, or just ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, in the court docket. Yeah. But yeah, guys, I mean, look on the DOJ website and look up bond fraud, see what pulls up. You're gonna see case after case, where this is gonna go wrong. And hey, maybe it'll take them a year or two, or maybe 5 years for them to catch up on their paperwork. But when they do, man, you're in their sights. So, anything else you want to add to this, Clint?
Well, we were going to do a section on how the world is essentially run by private associations.
Well, I think that should be an entirely different episode
Okay.
because that's an extensive subject. And we don't want to tire these guys out. Their brains have had enough. But let's do that next week.
All right. We can do that.
All right. So, all right, guys, you got any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself and shoot your shot. If you got any questions or proof that this stuff works.
Proof! God, I would be so excited to see proof of it.
I would love
it
to,
would
yeah.
be, my God, it would be just something after so many disappointments.
I know.
I mean, not so many, after complete and 100% disappointment. And come getting to the bottom of the frauds, straight from the FBI website.
Right. Yeah, guys. I mean, it's on all of these government websites pretty much that it talks about this exact same thing that, these guys teach.
I do want to say one thing, and I've said it. I've tried to. Anytime I talk about this on the radio, I really try to get this out, which is that, look, there's this is a time period is very volatile, where there's a lot of people out there, a lot of gurus looking for something to sell, anything, right?
Yeah.
Spin doctors, and I would invite people to have some patience. I
Hmm.
would invite people to not try to do this on their own. Not, obviously don't fall for this crazy stuff that we're talking about. But
Right.
as far as the PMA model, the trust model, have some patience, have some, have some self-control, and do not go try to do this yourself, or do not try to go to one of these guys who makes all these empty promises, especially if it's some kind of redemption, and anything where you're getting some reward or whatever.
Yeah.
Give us some time, give us your faith and your patience, because we both are, the reason that we're working together behind the scenes is to create a sort of unified front, or a unified private association, if you will, that really allows people to do it right in the first place, and
Yeah.
to share their experiences, and you know do it the right way. Because right now, I couldn't point you to somewhere that would do it the right way. I mean, I at this point, there's not one. I mean, there's not one person that, unless it's a public, family type of, or a medical trust, or that kind of thing that you do with a lawyer in the public, right?
Right.
I cannot point to anybody right now in the private that is doing this, and I think the reason for that is because they keep it private. Like we said,
Hmm.
you don't find information on this. You don't find, because it's not made public. So
Yeah.
I'm just, what I'm asking people is to have a little patience, have a little faith that we're trying to work in your best interest, and that eventually we're going to try to get a site together where we can all do this together, not together, but together, right? Separate, but not separate. It's
Yeah.
kind of hard to explain that way, but that definition we read the other day about privacy, um, being both individual, and you have to have someone to do it with, group. Um, do it. Just hold your horses. Hold your. It's great to be excited about it, but just don't fall for the gimmicks, right?
Yeah.
Hold, trust. Have some trust in the very singular people who are exposing a major fraudulent effort by a lot of people. And I can't really point to anybody and say they're not acting fraud, and trying to get you to do something fraudulent. So
Yeah.
please allow us to help you, and let us to do it. We don't want to make money from you. We want you to not go to jail for doing something completely idiotic in
Right.
hindsight, right?
Yeah.
So
And it's funny too, because in the PMA space, a lot of these guys will just hand you a PMA contract and they'll leave you to it. But it's not just a contract. I mean, it gets much more bigger than that. But anyways, and yeah, some of you guys that are in here, you're already clients of mine. So you guys already in the process of getting the setup, or you already have the setup. So we got a question. Band Life Bear's got his hand up.
Hey guys, thank you for your time. Great presentation as always. Had a question for Clint. You had mentioned that a lot of the courts and laws are based off of the Bible, and was just wondering personally for me, I struggled even reading through the Bible. So I was wondering if you had any recommendations or any books specifically that would give a little bit more insight into what the laws that the courts are based off of.
Well, that's what my book is about. You can download that for free and go through it. It's a living dictionary basically, and it goes through the Bible terms. What I found when I was doing research is that all the legal terms, especially when it came to Webster and his early dictionary when he was still alive, was that I found that there were all these biblical references. Um, and then I started looking at the maxims of law. And what I found why maxims or principles are so important is because depending on the jurisdiction, depending on what you've done to screw yourself, which is to enter into contract, right? All the maxims of law have that are protective of the man of God or the man following the law of nature, essentially. You don't have to. The Bible's not it's not religion. It's a book of law. It's throw away the religion. Throw away religions, and know that the Bible is your guide to not get entangled or untangle yourself from the legal system. What I found is that all words in the legal realm would be completely opposite to what the Bible. So all the concepts of the legal are always opposed to what's in the Bible. The most important rule is that the Bible tells you you shall not. Do not do this. Do not be surety. Do not respect persons. Do not respect flattering titles. Do not do this. Do not participate in usury or contract. Do not do, right? These are not religious things. These are avoidances of the legal trap, the legal web. So I found that for every legal thing that would trap you in the contract, there was a biblical law that said, do not do that. Do not become in bond and surety. Do not do that, right? So then I looked at these maxims of law. There's a site called Ecclesia dot something.org, and they had all these maxims of law, and next to them they had the Bible verse. And so I noticed that all the maxims of law that are biblical would protect the man from the pitfalls of contract, the pitfalls of entering into the legal system. And most of them, again, they're negative. The law of God, as they say, is negative. Do not do this. Whereas the positive law, that's why they call it positive, because you're adding to what already exists, right? You're adding fiction, art, artificial to the real. So you're positively saying, do this. In order to be part of this system, you must do this, which is always what the Bible tells you not to do. Right? Again, take religion out of the picture. That's what's stopping you. Whether you love religion or hate religion, you're going to hate the Bible, because religion's going to steer you away from the Bible and teach you, man, the new age, because they don't want you to know this. They don't want you to know that the Bible is the foundation. You can go to, I don't know if it's in my first book or not, but there's a great definition. I did a whole show around it in the 1889 version of W.C. Anderson's Dictionary of Law, and it's the definition of Christianity, and it explains the whole thing that, and it has the citations, the common law. The Bible is still common law in Pennsylvania. You can't really go against that. Oh, no, it's not. The Bible's this crazy document written by a bunch of... No, it's a book of law, and it's copyrighted by the freaking crown, right? So we took that common law system, including the Bible, and its principles or maxims of law. So again, the maxims of law that protect you all come from the Bible. The maxims of law that subject you to the legal system, to the crown, to all this legal stuff, legal meaning, I mean, it essentially carries the meaning of anti-God or anti-nature, anti-truth, right? Fiction. All the things, all the principles that are post-contract come from the legal side, but all the maxims that, so if I'm a judge, I look, I say, well, is he in contract? Because the maxim is that the contract makes the law. Uh-oh. So all of a sudden, God doesn't make the law, nature, right? Self-evidence. Now the contract makes the law. Now you're screwed. So have you gotten into a contract? If so, then I consider these maxims of law. If you're not in contract, well, then I consider these. And that's what defines your jurisdiction. It's what defines everything. So most judges at this point don't even use these previous maxims because they're dealing with citizens who are already in essentially a contractual situation through the use of the person. So hopefully that answers your question. The Bible is not at all what anybody thinks it is, and that's why I wrote the first book, and I've got 3 more books I'm going to release on the subject, because it's fascinating. I mean, the Bible is so much more than you could ever possibly imagine.
Yeah, no, that was a great great response. And another question I had was, is it, based off of your research, I mean, is it even worth acquiring old dictionaries like Black's Law Dictionary, the Maxims, and if yes, I'm saying you're not yes. Any, like, where would I go even about finding those older versions and
As
the newer
a
stuff, right?
writer, I mean, I've got a wall of stuff that I never really touch because, of course, everything's online. I like to get a physical copy of the uh, dictionaries that's online, that you can actually, it's been manipulated so you can actually copy the words. That way, the copy is, it's obviously a copy because it's off center or it's whatever. But since everything's online, it's much easier for me, instead of typing out every definition, just to copy and paste. But yeah, you go to thrift stores, you can go to, I think most of my stuff, a friend of mine actually was generous enough to send me an entire set of the Encyclopedia Judaica, which was really cool, fascinating stuff in there. I've got a Blacks, I've got all kinds of stuff over here, but I find the easiest thing to do for the Bible is to go to Blue Letter Bible, blb.org. And because there you have access to all the lexicons, the concordances, all the ancient terms and the meanings. And you'd be shocked at some of the things that are in there that you never would have considered, that everything's a metaphor, right? You can't take the Bible literally in any way. Christ is the personification, or the law, the word made flesh. You're not supposed to follow Christ. Worship Christ. You're supposed to follow Christ because Christ is the personification of the law, the word, right? But they don't teach that in church. They teach that you're supposed to worship this false god, Christ, even though the first commandment says you should only worship Jehovah, right? So it's crazy what you learn when you actually apply yourselves and forget all the things you think you know, forget all the things that people have told you, forget religion, and read the Bible for what it is. And every word. I mean, I literally looked up every word in the Bible, in the concordances and the lexicons, which are dictionaries. Webster's dictionary is great for that. Webster's 1828, I highly recommend. But as far as most dictionaries, the reason online versions are great is because you can search them. You don't have to turn the page and, it says, see this word, spend a minute, looking. But I mean, it's great to have the reference. I wrote my book as both a reference with a an index, and also it's sort of a dictionary that it's like the story of the dictionary. It's almost it's hard to explain, but it is the difference between, it is how the legal system and the Bible are 100% in every way opposed to each other, and that that's the purpose of both, right? That's the reason for the creation of both, is to oppose each other. Everything exists with an opposition to something else. Everything has its opposite or its opposing force, right? Well, of course, you're not going to write the law of nature down, in a work, unless you have something that it opposes, right? So otherwise it's a worthless document, right? It has to have something to oppose. And you find that in the concordances and the lexicons, it's exactly what it is. It's the saving grace for someone trying to both avoid and break out of the legal system. I will say that we're in a time that with technology and everything, that's a hell of a lot more difficult than it ever has been in history, obviously. So which is why, that's what led me to, after all this time, to this concept of the trust and the PMA and everything, the notion of private. I've been teaching, the Bible teaches you how to be private, essentially.
Thank you. Appreciate the information.
Mm-hmm.
Great question.
Secret trust.
Oh, yeah. It's not about the secret trust, it's about the private trust.
It cracks me up.
That you create.
Stop saying that.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Next week I want to talk about how private associations run the world. And I do want to have another meeting after that about, how the standard way of how an LLC is set up is actually to give you liability. And so I'm going to demonstrate for you guys what that looks like, not only in the filing, but in the operating agreement. And this is the way that lawyers set LLCs up typically. And so I'm going to walk through what that looks like and, a better way to do it. Because if used correctly, an LLC can absolutely be a pass-through entity. They're designed by the attorney to give you liability, because the attorneys, they're trained to give you liability no matter what. If we're talking about LLCs or anything else. So yeah, we'll go through that in probably 2 weeks. Join my Telegram, Safe Haven, PMA. That's where I post all the recordings. Some of it I don't post on YouTube if we get into, some controversial stuff. And then my website, safe-havenco.com. Clint, what's your website?
I mean, that's just it. I gotta start a new one. Realityblogger.wordpress.com with one blogger, with one G.
Okay.
If you type in that exact address, you can find some of my stuff. And then strawmanstory.info is where you can download the book. And other than that, Red Pill Sunday School channel on, that's probably the most important one, on YouTube, BitChute, and Odyssey. I don't really do the BitChute one, but Odyssey has all my latest radio shows and stuff like that.
Great. Yeah, and guys, I do have this website linked to my Telegram as well on last week's meetings recording post, as well as mine. So, all right, guys. Well, thanks for joining, and I'll see everyone later.
All right, man. Take care.
I'll see you guys.